Bonjour. Welcome to tonight's meeting. Uh, I'd like to start off with the Indigenous land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Robinson-Huron Treaty area and wish to recognize the neighboring community of Doki's First Nation. While we meet today, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation peoples that we call this land home. Number 3, I need the adoption of the agenda. Yeah, after. Oh, first. So we have a resolution to amend the agenda. We have to add a section 6.3.1. Resolution to award the contract for roads. So I need a movender. Dave, the seconder, Richard. All in favor? We're good to proceed. 4, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Dave?
I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest for 6.3.1. I gave pricing on parts of the work as a subcontractor to one of the bidding contractors.
Okay, thank you. So number 5, we have delegations. We're going to start with 5.1, presentation of the 2021 annual financial report by Baker Tilly. And I believe they will share their screen and do the presentation.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Good evening. My name is Roxanne Gerva. I am a partner with Baker Tilly and here to present along with my colleague, Marc Belanger, to do the presentation tonight with regards to your fiscal year ended December 31st, 2021. Before starting, I just wanted to thank Council for reappointing Baker Tilly as your auditors. For me, it shows that at least throughout the years that we've provided the service, that the fact that we've been reappointed shows that you trust the work that we do and that you trust that we'll continue to be doing everything we can to help the municipality in any capacity and to provide these services for a few more years. So again, thank you so much for the appointment. So to get started, I will share my screen. Can everybody see the draft financial statement? I'm seeing yes from Mark. So I believe all of you have received a copy of these financial statements. So I will go through them at a high level. If there are any questions, please feel free, and I'll probably ask at different points in time if there's any questions. So don't hesitate that we'll be able to get through the questions we might be deferring to management to provide us some assistance with answering if there's any very specific questions, but we'll definitely be able to provide any additional information that you require. So with regard to the financial statement of the municipality of French River, effective December 31st, 2021. So to start with our our independent auditors report. So again, this year we are providing the same opinion as we have in the past. It is what we consider a clean audit opinion. So which is this paragraph that you're seeing. So in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statement present fairly in all material respects the consolidated financial position of the corporation and municipality of French River as at December 31st, 2021, and its results of consolidated operation and its consolidated cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. The audit report goes on to provide what the basis of our opinion is, as well as talking about what the responsibility of management and those charged with governance is for the consolidated financial statements. The report also goes into some detail as to what is our responsibility with regards to the audit of the consolidated financial statements. They are presently dated as of today, May 18, 2022, anticipating the approval of the financial statements tonight by council. So if I can get you to go to page 1 of the financial statements, which is the statement of financial position. So as at December 31st, 2021, the municipality had financial assets for a total of $9.5 million, consisting of cash of $5 million. We had cash of Heritage Center of $1,472. We have taxes receivable of $495, as well as accounts receivable from a federal source of $260,572. We have provincial receivables of $48,000, as well as other receivable of $334,000. There was term deposits of $3.1 million. We have note receivables of $33,968, and then inventory held for resale at $75,000, giving us financial assets of $9.5. Our liabilities are a total of $6,632,337, of which we have our accounts payable and accrued liabilities of $1 million. We have, and I'm just going to list some of the key ones. So we have deferred revenue of $590,871. Deferred revenues tied to obligatory reserve funds of $632,881. We have accrued interest of 14, and we have municipal debt of $3,138,343, and then we have landfill closure and post-closure liability of $1,178,116 to give us the liability of 6.6. That leaves us with net financial assets of $2,884,314. Our non-financial assets, we have our tangible capital assets, and that represents all your infrastructure that the municipality has for $17,543,932. We have prepaid expenses of $201,152, and then inventory of $34,611. So total non-financial assets of $17,779,695. Leaving us with an accumulated surplus of $20,664,009. Is there any question with regards to the consolidated statement of financial position? Hearing none, I will now turn to page 2, which is the statement of operations of an accumulated surplus. So this represents all of the revenue and expenses of the municipality for the year ended December 31st, 2021. So we have total revenue of $9,174,760. The biggest component being the net taxation at $5.1 million. We received government transfers of $2.2. User charges amount to $1,290,306, and then we have other revenues of $550,719. Our expenses are split between the different services that are provided by the municipality for a total of $8,752,841. We have general government expenses of 1.7, protection services 1.3, transportation services 2.5 million. Environmental services at $1,036,214, health services 901,000, social and family services 432, recreation cultural services 644,000, and planning and development of 99,000. This provides us with excess of revenue over expenses before other of $421,919. We also had government transfers related to capital during the year of $400,595, which gives us at the end of December 31st, 2021, an excess of revenue over expenses. So essentially a surplus of $822,514. We started the year with an accumulated surplus of $19.8 million, giving us the accumulated surplus at the end of the year of $20,664,009. Are there any questions with regards to the statement of operation and accumulated surplus?
Can you just maybe scroll down a little
Oh,
bit?
I
so we could
apologize.
see? That's all
I
right.
apologize.
Yeah, we can't see the last 3-4 lines when you're presenting. Does
Okay.
anybody have any questions? We're good?
Okay. So with regards to the next statement, which is a statement of cash flow. So essentially this represents how it just explains how the cash position goes from the beginning balance to the end of the balance in 21. So we started the year with cash of 3.9 million and finished the year with 5,085,000. So essentially an increase in cash of 1.1 million throughout the year. This is a result of operating activities, which yielded $2.4 million worth of cash. Our capital activities utilized $1.1 million worth of cash. Our financing activities utilize $122,772 worth of cash, giving us that increase of 1.1. With regards to the statement of changes in net financial assets, so this just provides, if you look at your statement of changes in financial position, it just takes your financial assets less the liabilities to provide this net financial asset balance. So to be able to look at what makes an increase in that balance, we have to look at what the excess of revenue over expenses was throughout the year. So it was 822,000. Then we also look at all transactions that affect the tangible capital assets, as well as the inventory and prepaid expenses. So the combination of those acquisition, amortizations, gain on sale of tangible capital assets, as well as change in inventory prepaid, made that our net financial asset did increase by $630,921 over the course of the year. With regards to the note of the financial statements, there hasn't been a lot of changes in the notes to the financial statements when we compare these to the prior year, but I will just run through them very quickly. So note 1 just provides significant accounting policies that are used to make up these financial statements. And I'm scrolling through them pretty quickly since you have a copy. With regards to note 2, which is at the page 11 of the financial statements, the draft. This provides future accounting pronouncements. So this just provides to the reader of the statements what is coming to the changes with regards to financial statements that will need to be considered in the future. And given the fact that most of these pronouncements that are coming up are for fiscal years beginning on or after April 1st, 22, they will be in effect for the 23 year end, where we will be assessing if there's any impact with regards to this municipality. With regards to note 3, so we do talk about what are our key estimates within the financial statements. Note 4 just provides now additional information with regards to detail as to what the tax receivable number is. So it kind of breaks it down between what's current, what's arrears, what's payment in lieu, as well as interest and penalties. Note 5 provides information with regards to the notes receivable that are on the statement of financial position. Note 6 as well provides information on deferred revenues. Same as note 7 on the obligatory reserve deferred, and provides a little bit more information as to what we have. Municipal debt, note 8 just provides what is left in debt and provides that information as to what's going to be repayable over the next 5 years and thereafter. Note 9 talks about the liability that has been recorded with regards to landfill closure and post-closure. Note 10 provides information with regards to the tangible capital assets. So it does break it down between the major categories and shows what the additions disposable are with regards to what the municipality does control over with regards to its asset, as well as what has been accumulated and amortized. Note 11 does provide information with regards to the accumulated surplus number that we did see on the statement of financial position, which was that 20,664,000. It breaks it down between the surplus amount as well as what has been set aside for specific purposes with regards to reserves. Note 12 provides information with commitments that the municipality might have at December 31st and what's coming up within the next 5 years. Note 13 provides information with regards to the pension that is available to the employees of the municipality. Note 14 just talks about the cemetery care and maintenance fund, and 15 provides information with regards to the budget figures that you did see presented in the statement of operation, as well as the statement of changes in net financial asset. 17, which is provides information with regards to the segment information. So as part of the standards that have to do with municipalities, we have to provide the information on revenue and expenses in a different form as what you've seen on the statement of operation with regards to the different key service areas, and then breaking down the expenses within different categories so that the readers can see where some of the expenses, the key expenses, are spent in different lines versus the services line. At the end of these draft financial statements, you see the auditor's report that is tied to the cemetery care and maintenance fund. And again, this year we are providing a clean audit opinion as we have with the municipality. So I won't necessarily go through the detail of this audit reports, and it is identical to what we've just presented with regards to the municipality. For the cemetery care and maintenance fund, so the statement of continuity just shows that for this this fund, we did start the year with $147,133. It yielded some investment income about $1,517. There is additional revenues as well with regards to the sale of plots and marker installation of $3,151 and some expenses of $1,517 over the course of the year, leaving the balance in the fund at $150,284. With regards to the statement of financial position for the cemetery care and maintenance fund, it is all in cash and term deposits of $151,801. There is a liability to the municipality of French River for $1,517, giving us accumulated surplus of $150,284. So that was a pretty quick review of the draft statements. Again, not a lot of big changes with regards to the notes to the statements, but are there any questions?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Liabilities is 1517, and if you scroll up a page, you have 1517 and 1517, like the exact amount 3 times in a row? Like the interest, is that the second line is interest income?
The investment income, yes.
Is 1,517. The expenses are 1,517, and then the other one are 1,500. All the same number? How come?
I could answer that. If, so essentially with the cemetery care and maintenance fund, the municipality is limited as to the expenses that it can do for maintenance within the cemetery. It is limited to that investment income. So as it earns interest within the fund, those are the only funds available for maintenance. So if maintenance costs do exceed that, we cannot reflect beyond that investment income. The amount that is reflected in liability is the amount owing to the municipality for those maintenance costs.
So anything else is reflected in other departments of the municipality? Is that?
Any excess is absorbed through the municipality.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Councillor Dean and then Councillor Richard.
It was a pretty quick run through, and some of us haven't seen our written financial statements yet. But
Okay.
I have a comment or a question that is kind of general, and I just wondered if you'd like to comment at all on the overall financial situation with this municipality, and especially as compared with any other smaller municipalities that you might be working with.
Yeah, this was just the first part of the presentation that we wanted to do tonight. So we do have a benchmarking presentation which will provide guidance as to how French River does compare to some other small municipalities, as to how it also is with regards to its financial health when you compare to some of the ratios tied to what the ministry would look at, and see how you would fare with regards to those risk criteria. So that is the next part of this presentation.
Thank you.
And I apologize if I went through it quickly. I was just under the impression that the statements, that you had had a chance to look at the statements. So I apologize for that. So if there is anything else you'd like me to go over and to review it again, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Hi, Roxanne. On page 19, reserves, I just wanted to make a note that yesterday at the library's board meeting, there was a motion to transfer $100,000 from their general surplus to a special reserve for special projects, or new reserve for special projects. So there's going to be a little change here from, if you look at the second number, 200,899 French River Public Library Board is going to become 100,899. And at the bottom, the second line, reserve set aside for specific purposes, library, it's going to become 122,652. So it's just a switch between two numbers.
And that's fine. We'll definitely make the change
Yeah.
when we finalize the statement. Thank you, Mark.
Councillor Richard, did you have a question?
Well, I guess it was sort of asked and answered in general. My question was also with respect to how we stand in comparison. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers here. I mean, just the, we have an increase in the excess in revenue of, 822,000, which is pretty good. So, I mean, some people will look at this, from a taxpayer's perspective to say, okay, if the municipality is making $822,000 in profits in excess, why do we raise taxes by $100,000, for example? So it's just a general question. It's not. I'm not saying that as a critique. I'm just saying that as an observation from somebody on the other side of our table.
The $800,000 is the operating surplus. You have to take into account transfer from reserves also when you're calculating the tax rate. So the operating portion is one side of it, but the reserves, the transfer from reserves is the other one. And a lot of transfers occur when we finance the capital assets.
Yeah, I understand that,
Yeah.
but also, I mean, we're also up on our reserves too. So it's like, I'm not saying we have to drain the reserves, because that's the reason why we have reserves. So we're not at the bottom of the barrel. So
We also have to take in consideration that the gas tax funding was doubled last year, which we didn't account for in the budget. So that was an additional 162,000. We also received another 143,000 from the Ministry of Learning and Development and Mines. So those attribute to some of the surpluses, of which during the budget process of this year, we've accumulated into a specific fund.
thank you.
Okay, I think that's all for now. If you want to continue.
Yep. So I will stop sharing so that Mark can take control at this point.
Excellent, thank you. As Roxanne had mentioned, we will be presenting some of the benchmarking figures that the municipality of French River is used to us presenting annually, which I have pulled up on screen. And maybe just a quick refresher on how we obtain this information. So all of this benchmarking information is obtained through the financial information return information that is required annually to be submitted to the ministry by each municipality. So all that information is public data. So we simply take that data and put it into a graph format just for information and discussion purposes with council. We also reflect the ministry's risk levels. They provide that information as well. It can be found on their website for each of the ratios that we've selected to present to council. Now, because we are taking information from these financial information returns, you will notice that on the right-hand side, when we are comparing from municipality to its neighboring municipalities, it is using the 2020 information. The 2021 information is not yet available at this time for all municipalities. So it's for that reason that there is 1 year behind for the graphs when comparing to other neighboring municipalities. However, we do take into account the 2021 financial information when we're doing a trend analysis, which is typically on the left-hand of your screen. So our first ratio that we put together for you is the tax arrears ratio. And this is simply taking the taxes receivable less any allowance for uncollectible taxes as a percentage of total taxes levied. What this could indicate is if there's a high percentage, for example, might indicate a collection problem for tax arrears or potentially a taxpayer's inability to pay. The downward trend that we see in that first graph going back to 2018, so a downward trend, a lower percentage rather, is a positive attribute. So the lower that percentage, the lower risk that the ministry considers. And anything below 10%, the ministry considers being at low risk. So although when we compare the second graph on the right hand of the screen, the municipality of French River found itself relatively in the middle, and you can see that it's color coded as yellow at 12.53% for this ratio. If we were to consider 2021 in here, that's come down to 8.22%. So it does fall below that low risk threshold at this time. So this does demonstrate essentially some improved efforts on tax collections in 2021 and over the course of the past 4 years. With regards to the net financial assets as a percentage of revenue, so it's just that. These are your net financial assets or potentially net debt for some municipalities. So essentially your short-term assets less your short-term liabilities, including long-term debt and reserves as a percentage of own revenue. So this does exclude grant funds. This is in particular your taxation revenues as well as your user fees. And what this could indicate is a high negative percentage might indicate a lack of resources available for future needs. So the ministry does consider anything better than a negative 50%. So any municipality finding themselves in a net financial asset position is considered a low risk. And we can very clearly see over the past 5-6 years that the municipality of French River has had an increase in their net financial assets. When comparing to some of the neighboring municipalities for 2020, French River falls relatively in the middle, but well above that low risk threshold. The third ratio that we're presenting, total reserves ratio. So this represents the reserves as a percentage of operating expenses. And this would demonstrate how much money is set aside for future needs or potential contingencies to the municipality. So again, the past 4 years, we do see an increase in this percentage. And in this case, increase in percentage are a positive attribute. And anything above 20% as a percentage is viewed as low risk by the ministry. So French River does find itself in a very positive situation with regards to its reserves and reserve funds and its ability to meet future needs and address any unknown contingencies going forward. With regards to the cash ratio, so this represents cash and cash equivalents as a percentage of current liabilities. So this would be the ability of the municipality to address any short-term liabilities with liquid funds. So what I mean by liquid funds is the municipality does have some term deposits, but those are typically locked in for a longer period of time. They do exceed beyond December 31st of 2022, for example. So those are not considered liquid. So this would essentially be the operating cash dollars and its ability to cover any short-term debt. And again, as we've seen in previous slides, there has been an upward trend over the past 4 years. The municipality does find itself with a cash ratio of 467%, and anything over 10% is viewed as, again, a low risk by the ministry. Debt servicing ratio represents payments on debt divided by the municipality's total revenue. And this would essentially represent how much of each dollar raised is spent on municipal debt. There's been a downward trend. This is nothing new to us. We've seen this in the past several years. The municipality has not incurred any new debt. It continues to pay down its existing debt. So that percentage would continue to decrease if that essentially does not change. And once again, the municipality does find itself amongst the low risk level stated by the ministry. So for 2021 at 2.94%, well below 5%, which is that low risk threshold. Asset consumption ratio. So this is essentially a representation of the aging of the tangible capital assets within the municipality. So as that percentage goes up, that reflects that, for example, 2021 having an asset consumption ratio of 54.69%, but generally speaking, the capital assets have gone beyond the original estimate, or at least it's halfway through its useful life as had been estimated when it was first acquired. So I do use the word estimate very liberally here because this does involve a lot of estimation when determining the useful life. So if, for example, the policy adopted by the municipalities to recognize something over 20 years, but some of those assets might extend beyond that, that does play into this ratio quite a bit. So certainly something to keep in mind. The municipality does find itself amongst the moderate risk level just with this aging, but quite similar to its neighboring municipalities as well. And the other important thing to note is all municipalities are currently in their asset management development stage. So a much more in-depth analysis is currently being done with regards to this ratio. Lastly, the operating surplus ratio is essentially annual surplus or deficit in some cases divided by the municipality's revenues. So this would indicate the ability to cover operational costs as well as have funds available for other purposes. So although we do see a dip for 2021, so it did go from about 16.49% in 2020 down to 11.86% in 2021. Once again, the municipality does find itself in the low risk. Any positive percentage is viewed as low risk by ministry standards. So the municipality of French River is on the low end as compared to neighboring municipalities, but once again, very low risk in that regard. And in 2018, just as an added benchmarking figure, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing determined that the average for municipalities in the north, the population between 2,500 and 10,000, it's approximately 9.2%. So French River does find itself well within the average in Northern Ontario in this regard. That essentially concludes the benchmarking piece of our presentation. Now we do have some audit findings that we typically go over with council as well, but before we get into that, are there any questions or comments?
No, it seems everybody's okay.
Excellent. So very quickly, I will address some of the key points that we discuss with council annually, the purpose of which is just to summarize certain aspects of the audit that we believe to be of interest to council. So Roxanne in the audit report had touched quickly on the different responsibilities with regards to the financial statements. So in particular, management is responsible to ensure that those consolidated financial statements are prepared and presented fairly in accordance with the Canadian public sector accounting standards, whereas our role as the auditor is to express an opinion on those statements in accordance with auditing standards. Role for council is to essentially act as an objective, independent liaison between us and management in that regard. Additional responsibilities for council is to assist in the planning process when appropriate, to meet with us prior to the release and approval of the audited consolidated financial statements and to review the audit, disclosure, and compliance issues, as well as reviewing selection of accounting policies, reviewing and approving the draft consolidated financial statements, as well as advising us of any issues or disclosures in governance, fraud, or illegal acts. Our audit process typically includes 4 stages. One being the initial planning stage, and then we further develop that audit plan based on that planning. We execute the audit plan and then finally report and assess performance, which is the stage that we find ourselves in with council at the moment. During that planning stage, we do have to make a few decisions on our audit approach. And we did determine, based on our understanding of internal controls, that we were able to place reliance on certain systems of internal controls this year. So we did test operating effectiveness, in particular of controls in the payroll audit cycle. So we did adopt what we call a combined approach. So we are relying on some controls, and in other areas, we are going to source documents in order to validate the financial information that is in your draft financial statements. As far as audit risks and results, there aren't any significant audit risks that we have identified, so nothing to bring to your attention. With regards to audit accounting policies, no new accounting policies were adopted in the current year. Key estimates, Roxanne had pointed out that there is note disclosure with regards to key estimates, and those key estimates are typically the useful life of tangible capital assets and its related amortization, any allowance for doubtful taxes receivable, as well as the landfill closure and post-closure care liability. We also talk about materiality annually. So materiality is the term that we use to describe the significance of financial statement information to decision makers. So in our audit, we utilize certain audit standards in developing that materiality guideline. In particular for the municipality of French River in 2021, that materiality level was 262,000. Essentially what that means is any errors that if we were to identify that exceed 262,000, we would require that those errors be corrected in these financial statements in order for us to provide a clean audit opinion. That is not to say that we don't ignore anything below that threshold. We do take into account different scope levels to determine the work that we're doing for the audit. But all this to say that we did not come across any misstatements that we wish to bring to your attention. One of the last pieces here, independence. So annually, we are required, based on Canadian auditing standards, to confirm our independence with the municipality. So I am confirming with you today that we are, as a firm, Baker Tilly S&T, as well as all of our audit team members, are independent of the municipality of French River. A few quick other matters. All related party transactions are disclosed in the notes to your consolidated financial statements. No significant transactions were entered into by the entity that you should be aware of, to our knowledge. There were no significant matters arising from the audit discussed with management and no disagreements. We did not identify any deficiencies in internal control, and we did not identify any instances of illegal acts, fraud, intentional misstatements, or errors that were noted during the audit, and no instances of non-compliance of laws and regulations were identified during the audit either. Now, we do typically take this opportunity, although we have not come across any matters to bring to your attention, we do inquire with council whether there are any instances of illegal acts or fraud that we should be aware of. Hearing none.
Good, I guess. All good, I guess.
Yeah.
All good?
We're good.
Perfect. So,
This not related to this line, but just something that's on my mind is that we have two big capital projects that need to be addressed in the future. How do you see that impacting us? Like, I know we have a culvert that's 1 point something million, and then we have the sewers. How's that going to affect our reserves moving forward? Should we be, like, I know we're planning for them, but we don't actually have how's that going to affect? Do you see it affecting or?
I could certainly address that question. I don't know if Mark Fleury, the treasurer, would like to address that, or if you would prefer that we address that question.
Thank you. For the culvert, we have a plan in place. We have funding within the next, well, from last year, this year, and next year to pay the majority of the culvert. For the sewers, that's another matter. We're discussing this with Mark and trying to find solutions going forward.
a lot of it's dependent on government funding, infrastructure funding as well. And both projects were earmarking any new programs that may come out of the new elections at the province as well. So the goal in terms of moving forward, although is we're trying to finance, or not finance, but we're trying to fund it all on our own. Our goal is always to try to leverage as much revenues from the provincial and federal governments as possible. And that's basically where we're going to.
I'm good.
Excellent. Thank you for the response with regards to fraud. The second question that we do ask annually, because we are responsible for our audit report up to the date of approval of these financial statements, is any member of council aware of any subsequent event since our audit field work, which would have occurred in April of this year, or since the year end of December 31st, 2021, that may impact either our audited financial statements or our audit? Hearing none. In conclusion, we are ready to release the consolidated financial statements, subject to the completion of just a few minor steps. One being the receipt of a signed management representation letter, which we already have received from your management team, as well as just completing our discussion with council this evening and receipt of evidence of council approving these consolidated financial statements. And essentially, that is it. That completes our presentation. If there are any other comments or questions, we'd be happy to address them.
I think everybody is good. Thank you very much for presenting and for all the hard work you guys do for us. Thanks. So
Thank
I think Melanie has we need a mover and a seconder. So Councillor Dean and Councillor Dave.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be it resolved that council approves the audited financial statements prepared by Baker Tilly Chartered Accountants for the year ending December 31st, 2021.
All in favor? You guys have a good evening.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and wishing you a great evening as well.
So we'll continue on to 6.3. Oops, I missed 6 reports and items for consideration. 6.1 general government, there's nil. 6.2 finances. I think we just got a really detailed report of where we're at. There's nothing to add. 6.3, a resolution to award the contract for roads. Bob or Martin going to speak to this? That's what we just added. Good evening, Martin.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Good. All right, so we received we opened our road tender, and we are presenting it. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up here real quick. So the tenders for this year came in a little bit over budget. Apparently COVID hit the road industry as well as everyone else. So the background of this presentation is the Gauthier, Gilbert, Haas, Laclaire, Lise, Pilon, and Three Camp Road have been identified as potential roads to be rehabilitated this year. Where am I here? Sorry, I'm just trying to get this going here. Okay, the road rehabilitation projects for 2022, we had a scheduled budget of $687,000 for this year. And the total bid that came in, only one bid was actually accepted. 2 of them were rejected. So we are asking council to approve one of the following recommendations. Option number 1 is to follow through with the 7 roads, which comes in at $1 million, just over $1 million, which ends up being roughly about $300,000 over budget. That would be option one. Option two reviews the three roads, option two, reviews almost all the roads except for the most expensive road. That way we would be able to get more roads accomplished instead of the biggest road, which is Pilon. That ends up coming under budget. And then option three is to look at the three roads that kind of really need the work this year. The other roads could probably survive another year without doing a full rehabilitation. And that budget ends up coming in at $700,000, which is roughly $40,000 over budget. If anybody has any other questions or concerns, please let me know and I'll do my best to hopefully explain everything.
Councillor Richard has a question for you.
So if we're looking at all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all 7 roads that are that have been marked as for this year's project, I'm assuming that all those 7 roads have the same degree of requirements. Like we were grading them as a forget what the structure was, but we like about when they should be done. So I'm assuming that they're all at the same state. So if we're not doing one now, then I'm assuming that that road would become top priority for the following year, as opposed to not going back into the pot and so my assessment, I'm okay in saying that. So basically, if let's say, for example, if option 1 is to do everything and then it's an extra $300,000, or option 2 or 3 is to do partial and then defer those to next year. So I guess the question is, are any of these roads, regardless if it's Pilon being the biggest one or the other ones that you're considering to move for the next year, are they in a state that they're required to be done now? Or if they were to be done in a year from now, it would be sort of fine. I'm sure if people living on that road today would be here, they'd be saying they want it now, but I'm talking about, the, anyway, you know what my question is?
Yes. So as identified in option 3, Gautier, Haas, and Pilon are the roads that desperately require immediate work. As for the other roads, they are also top of the list, but we can push it for a 1 year, just saying that we could do regular maintenance, patch the potholes, rip up the road if we have to. Some of the roads are pretty torn up already. We can change a couple culverts in-house. It's something that we can push the issue, but it would be a lot better if we attacked it head on.
Okay, I have a question. How are our reserves for roads if we were to take $300,000 out of that and do all the roads? Where do we stand with the reserves, Mark?
Right now, we're at 1.6 million. So we'd end up about 1.3 million at the end of the year. Yes.
How much are we reinvesting in our reserves this year in the roads?
The plan was to spend 747,000 from reserve and reinvesting 405,000. So we were depleting a portion of our reserve already. So now we'd be depleting another 300,000. So we'd go from 1.9 to 1.3 million.
Okay. For Richard?
So I guess a follow-up on that. So one of the reasons why we're bringing this up is that obviously some of these contracts are requiring a quick response because of all this inflationary pressure over the last little while, where some of these projects are becoming much more expensive because of, regardless of either gas or whatever, but anyway, at the end of the day, they're more expensive. So if we were to defer any of those, of course, we don't know what the contracts or the tenders are going to be in the following year. Let's hope that the price of gas will go from $2.22 a liter back to $1.10, but that's probably highly unlikely. So chances are that these projects aren't going to be less expensive next year, or even in 3 or 4 or 6 months from now. So the thing is like, there's no perfect solution here. There's no magic pill, I think. So, I mean, at first I would say, deferring some of them so that we don't have to dip in. But I mean, if we do them later, chances are maybe some of these projects might be 30-40% more expensive. And I mean, that's just an uneducated guess there, but I mean, it'd probably be something like that. So there might not be that big of a saving. And I mean, this is not really a statement I'm making. It's more of an open-ended question statement at the same time. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Do any other counselors? Counselor Bob, do you have
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm definitely not in favor of option 1 and dipping into our reserves. I would think option 3 would be the most worthwhile for us to do the 3 roads that really need the money. The work. And I believe $40,000 like over budget, that we can get it somewhere out of the reserves. It's not a big hit. And the other roads just fall into priority for the following year.
Counselor Dean?
I agree with Councillor Bob. I think that option 3 is the best route for us to follow this year. None of us have any idea what costs are going to be like next year, whether they're going to be more or less. But let's deal with next year, and let's try to stay close to where our budget amount for this year's major road work is. As we all know, besides that, there will still be some other odds and ends that we're going to have to pick up some money for too. So I would suggest we stay there and we can handle that, as Bob says, that little extra in there out of our budget from reserves. I'm in favor of that too.
Okay. So your opinion, Richard?
Well, it's, I mean, like I said, we don't have a crystal ball, but I mean, if I'm sort of like mulling it over in my head and as I'm thinking here, if you look at the different amounts that are allocated for each road by different contractors, there's such a big difference between one and the other. And, and why, I don't know. But the thing is that, for example, if a contract is worth $69,000 and another for one road is worth $69,000, the other one's worth $159,000, there's obviously a big discrepancy. That has nothing to do with the increased cost of living. There's got to be something different there. So, so maybe if we push some of those smaller projects next year, I don't suspect that they'll go from 300,000 to 600,000. I don't think so. So we might pay a little bit more for that, but at least we wouldn't be dipping $300,000. So I guess at the end of the day, I'd be okay with option 3. So sorry for the long answer.
No, that's okay. That's what we're here for, to discuss, and everybody has our voice. So I think we're ready to make a decision, I believe. So Councillor Dean has another comment.
I would like to have our CAO make a comment on where he thinks is the best route for us to go here. Well, I think that it's important. He's the guy that brings us to the table, and along with Bob Martin, but I'd like to have that opinion, and Martin too maybe would like to he can voice an opinion up there too. So let's hear what our staff that we pay good money to for these opinions, let's hear what they've got to say about it. Where we go with this project?
How do I answer this? By providing information and not an opinion. So, as you're aware, the Public Works Committee works on a 5-year capital works plan on a yearly basis. They determine with the assistance of staff that these roads needed to be addressed this year in high priorities. The costs that have come into play has played a role, but whichever options you take, if you take option one, then we don't fall behind on our capital works progress going forward for next year. If you go to option three, which is this, and again, this is a council's decision to make. This is why the report was made in this fashion, because this is a council decision and not a staff decision. If you go to option three, then basically what you're doing is throwing the roads plan back a year or two further to be able to address the roads that you're pushing back this year. Now, the one thing I will say, we as staff and as a Treasury Department has always said, we build up reserves for a reason. This could be one of the reasons that you may consider it, and then see what next year brings in terms of trying to build these reserves up. We haven't given up hope on the Montégain project of additional infrastructure funding coming in that may free up other gas tax funding and Northern Ontario Heritage Fund funding that we can reattribute to our roads capital reserve budget to replenish it in the future. Does that answer your question, Councillor Dean?
Not really.
No. I'm playing the role of a politician.
What I kind of take from that is you're suggesting that we could go with the whole ball of wax
Yeah.
this year and draw from our reserves. I know our reserves are in very good condition, but nobody knows what's going to happen next year, or whether the situation with inflation and so forth is only going to get worse or whether it gets better. And I guess I tend to, maybe it's from a lot of years in business, to be a cautionary, I guess is what I'm saying, and trying to stay close to what we had budgeted for roads this year. But I understand what you're saying, and let's maybe I'll better leave it there. I'll go along with it if it's the opinion of the few of us that are here. What do you got to say, Dave?
He can't
He
say
can't say
anything.
anything.
Oh, that's right.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
as staff, we have discussed all three options. We are comfortable with all three options, whichever option council decides to choose. We can work with option one. We had long discussions with Mark and myself in how to address those going forward. But again, we as staff, we're providing you with the information, we're providing you with the reserve position, and just without making the outright decision for you.
Councillor Rick?
Thank you. So I guess, again, mulling it over as we speak. So from general accounting, we're adding reserves and we're taking from reserves. We're going to be netting roughly about $300 and some thousand at the end of the day, correct? In here for the reserves?
We're gonna use an additional 300,000.
We're going to what?
We're
Sorry?
gonna use an.
No, that's not what I'm saying. So before this project here, what we're planning on taking out and what we're planning on adding at the end of the year, we're still going to be adding an extra $300,000 to the reserve, correct?
We were using 300,000.
Is that what we're doing? We're going the other way around?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
all right. So that changes my thought. So I thought it was the other way around. So, okay. But at the end of the day, I mean, even if we were to take 300,000 from the reserve, I mean, staff seems comfortable that if we do, we're not in a state of emergency or anything like that. You know, we're going from 1.6 to 1.3 or something to that effect. And the fact is that we won't be paying more next year for these projects for sure. So even if projects go up an extra 15 or 20%, that's an extra 15%. That's like 45 grand or so on that money. So we'd be saving that. So, so I'm not really sold on one or the other anymore, but I'll go with whatever motion goes. I mean, I might support either one. So, but anyway.
So I think that we should get the most done that we can, considering we had a surplus last year. Considering I don't foresee the price of things going down in the future. I know that we did discuss this year, we had a lot of projects and our tax, we only put the taxes up 2%. We don't do these projects next year and they're in worse scenario next year. And we're trying to keep taxes low on an annual basis. Not really smart to move them from one project from one year to the other down the road if we do have the money now to do it. And it would still be in a healthy position with the reserves at 1.3 million. Finishing with the 1.9, 1.3. If we're getting the work done, then the residents would be happy that the work is getting done. Because, we all do know that people complain the taxes are high. And we've worked so hard at getting the roads to where they're at now with increasing the budget every single year. And a lot of people have seen the road plan that we've had out there. So if we are capable and able to, I would like to stick on that road plan, at least for this year. Because we know there's elections and we have no clue what's gonna happen come election time, or, whether it's provincial or municipal elections moving forward, a lot of things can change. So my opinion is to go with number 1. So I think we're gonna need a motion so Richard's gonna,
I can make a motion. So the motion would be to go for option number 1. So I'll let the clerk read it, I guess, or, before we do that.
We need a
seconder.
seconder.
We have to be in agreement, so it's not about me, it's not about me, it's about what we want as a group, so.
so Bob and Dean.
Well, I'll second the motion to put it on the floor. I might
Yeah.
have more to say.
Yeah, so Richard moved and then
Dean seconds.
So it is duly moved and seconded, but resolved that council awards contract number 2022-10 for the rehabilitation of Gautier, Gilbert, Haas, Laclaire, Lise, Pilon, and 3 Camp Roads to Betama Bulldozing Inc. for an amount of $1,09,269.50. Did I say that right? Plus applicable taxes. And further, that council approves that the amount that is over the approved 2022 budget is going to be funded by the Roads Capital Reserve. So the budgeted amount was 687,000.
Okay. So did you want to comment to that, Dean?
I will. I'll tell you right up front, and I'll go along with you, but I was very impressed with what we heard from our accountants a short time ago and the situation that we're in financially. I think that we are in this situation, or in this enviable position, it'd be better to say, with finance in our municipality, because we've been both careful. In some ways, we've been fortunate in terms of the assistance we've had from different levels of government and so forth in the last couple of years. But regardless of where it came from, we've spent wisely. And so we've developed a pretty good cushion that we can look at. And I don't think there is any real need for us to continue to build the cushion forever and ever. I mean, there are things that the people in this municipality would like us to see us do. So we better do that. And I'd be the first one to say that in my years on council, it's roads, roads, roads. That's the issue that everybody in this municipality puts almost at the highest, although lately we've heard some grumbling about our garbage stuff too. So I'll just leave it that I enjoy seeing where we are, and maybe what lets us be a little loose here tonight and spend an extra 300 grand. So that's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Councillor Bob.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I've always had the thought that, and I agree with you, Councillor Dean and Councillor Rick and everyone, but I've always had the thought that the strength of a municipality is in reserves. I hate like heck to dip into the reserves, but what Councillor Dean says at some point, you got to stop banking, putting money in the mattress and spending some. I've had numerous comments on Dry Pine Road, on the Prevost Road. What a nice job was done in the past. And this is what we're talking about doing with other roads for the future. And people, taxpayers see the work on the roads and they appreciate it. It's not something that's just pulled out of the air. I hate dipping into reserves, although in the past, I think the budget was 600,000 and this year was raised to 687. Now we're talking of going to 1 point something. I can live with both options, knowing that we're going to get great results with it. But I don't want to set a precedence that we spend this money on roads year after year. I'd like to see it come back down to the 600,000. And regardless that it's in the election year or nothing, this year, it has nothing to do with this. Thank you.
Vote. So I think we're all in favor. All in favor? I didn't mean it that way, that it was election year, but we do have a provincial election that we get a lot of funding from. So it does make a difference at the end of the day for that. So, okay, Counselor Dave can come back. Thanks, Martin. Recreation and Community Services, 6.4.1, a resolution to award the purchase of the audio and lighting system for Joe Chartrand Park. I need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Richard and Counselor Bob. And I believe, Bob, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, good evening. So we submitted tenders for this in late March, and we did not receive any submissions. So following our purchasing policy, we can go to single source to purchase this equipment, which we did to Mr. Jacques Grills for $29,608. So the recommendation is to approve Mr. Jacques Grill as the successful bidder. Do you have any questions?
Yes, so it is duly moved and seconded. Be resolved that council awards the purchase of an audio and lighting system for Joe Chartrand Park to Jacques Grills for an amount of $29,608 plus applicable taxes.
Mover and a seconder. Counselor Dave and Counselor Dean.
It is duly moved and seconded, but resolved that bylaw 2022-27, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the next generation 911 authority service agreement with Bell Canada, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? Okay, 6.5.2, administrative monetary penalty system. Sudbury's Planning Board report and draft AMPS bylaw. And Andrea is going to speak to this, I believe. Yeah. Andrea, can we take a 5-minute recess?
That's fine with me.
Is that okay? I just got to run to the washroom. Okay. Okay, we're good to start. Andrea's gonna do a presentation.
Hello, everyone. Okay, it's working. Okay. This is the administrative monetary penalty bylaw. This has been spoken to over many meetings, but this is your first chance to look at what the draft of the bylaw actually, how it actually looks, how it actually comes together. I know council has seen a lot of bylaws coming to them in the last few months. The bylaw department's been doing an extensive review of the bylaws that we felt were most important and that were going to be included in this administrative monetary penalty bylaw. It was the perfect time to do housekeeping, check our fines, add anything that the bylaw department had been looking to improve as far as enforcement went. So this is a culmination of a lot of the bylaws that you've seen so far. It can look rather intimidating with its over 40 pages and many, many fines and short form wordings. But just remember, this is a culmination of many bylaws coming into this, this document. It's fines that we already had in place. It's penalties that were already described in the bylaws that are described here as well. The idea behind this bylaw, of course, is to allow us to bring the court process more in-house. So as opposed to writing part one tickets and then having to defend them in court, we will be able to bring that court process into a more local setting. The bylaw enforcement team feels this will be an amazing tool for us to help gain compliance when there are bylaws that are being broken in the municipality. If only because when we do write a ticket under this bylaw, we're not having to drive to North Bay and going into provincial court to defend anything that we would have done to try to get compliance. Everything is being done within the municipality. And we just feel like as an enforcement team, we will more likely use this tool to help gain compliance where we might be more hesitant to write tickets if we knew that it was just eventually going to be a trip to provincial court. So the report goes over what the current court process is like and what the proposed process will be like under this administrative monetary penalty bylaw. The bylaw itself outlines what the bylaw is about, the steps of how this process will work as far as going through a screening process and a hearing process, and then outlines the bylaws that have been included so far. It includes the clean yard bylaw, property standards bylaw, noise, fire, tree harvesting, responsible animal bylaw, and also the waste management bylaw. And eventually will include bylaws like our parts of our zoning bylaw, building, smoking, signage, and fencing. We didn't feel those were the most important bylaws to include at this time because a lot of this process will be helpful when we're looking at short-term rentals within the municipality, which is our next discussion that'll be coming forward to council eventually, or within the next few months. So at this point, I'd like to open up to questions. The intention really is to get this information in front of council so that you can ask as many questions as you like about the process, so that we can eventually get a full draft in front of you to pass.
Okay, Councillor Richard.
Thank you, through you. So questions, and I get the idea of not having to go to court in North Bay or anywhere else, that's good. So how will that, so if somebody wants to fight that ticket, how will that be done here in-house? And I guess the other part of my question relates to now that if you're issuing what you call a part one ticket, that money goes towards the provincial government and doesn't come back here. Whereas in this case, it's going to be funded directly here. I mean, the intent of this is not to be making money, but is to be able to facilitate the whole process much more easily. But at the same time, you can monitor it and not monitor it, but you can regulate it in the sense that if a ticket isn't paid, it's added on the city, on the property tax, correct?
Through you. Yes, that is correct. So I heard two parts to your question. So if someone were written a ticket for having long grass, because they'd been told multiple times to cut their grass and they didn't. So an administrative monetary penalty would be written. That person would then be given 15 days to set up a screening officer interview. The screening officer would be appointed within either within the municipality or amongst the clerks within the shared service staff. We've discussed a couple of different ways that this might look, especially when dealing in small towns and potential conflicts of interest where we would know the people coming in to discuss their penalty. But regardless of who's listening, the screening officer who has been appointed by council would listen to the person's reason why they either felt like they didn't deserve the ticket or couldn't afford the fee or the fine. These are not meant to be punitive. This is only to help us gain compliance in our bylaws. If the person has an excellent excuse as to why they didn't cut their grass and then didn't want to and couldn't afford that fine, the screening officer can either keep the fine at the same rate or at the same amount, reduce the amount, or give the person more time to pay. Now, again, we're all about gaining compliance within this system. So if writing a ticket is what gets someone attention to cut their grass, and if we don't have any ongoing issues, then there really wouldn't be a reason for us to keep it at that particular fine. If we had someone coming in with multiple instances where they're not cutting their grass, then eventually that screening officer will say, I'm sorry, this is my third time I've seen you. You are paying your fine. At that level, the person with the penalty would either accept and pay, or they have the potential to appeal at the hearing officer level. If they accept and pay, that's the end of the issue. If they do not accept it, do not pay, and do not ask for a screening officer, then it takes us to that portion where you stated the administrative monetary penalty fine can be rolled over onto the person's taxes. So yes, it is an easier way for us to collect these penalties if it goes that far. Again, they're not meant to be punitive amounts. It's only just to gain compliance. One of the advantages is, though, if we've put in the time and the effort to go through this system, we do eventually have the ability to collect on the penalty, because there is manpower and time put into this process.
I believe Councillor Bob had a question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And those were a couple of and they've been answered. Just one step further, say a tenant is not cutting his grass, and you tell him 1, 2, 3 times, and what course of action have you got with a person like that? Are you going to go to the landowner, or?
Excellent question. So these administrative monetary penalties are really only best used against residents of our municipality because of that option to be able to roll over the penalties onto the taxes. So yes, it would go to the property owner. The property owner is at the end of the day responsible for their property. If we make the property owner aware of the problem, and especially if we start to write them tickets where it costs them money, they will have to address their tenant in order to get the issue taken care of, or pay for someone to cut the grass.
Any other questions? Councillor Dean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of wonder about the officer that we're going to have to appoint to hear any of the concerns that some people might have after getting ticketed or notice that they're going to fine to pay. And I'm wondering, do we have to hire a professional for this? Are we going to, is it going to be costly to us, to the municipality, to have somebody that looks after this? I kind of guess whatever it is probably less than it costs to process stuff in court the way we've been doing it. So I'm thinking, is it going to be a better system? But I just kind of like to have more detail on how and who is going to get appointed to this thing, and listen to do the screening process.
Okay, through you, your chair. Screening officer will be appointed within staff. So at that level, that would be someone who you're already paying to work within the municipality. The hearing officer, though you're right, would be somebody appointed, and needs to be someone outside of staff, cannot be on council, someone completely unbiased. We'd be putting out essentially a call for resumes for people within the area who would want to work in the position. Some municipalities have been lucky enough to have people volunteer for the position. They're either retired OPP officers or judges or lawyers who just have an interest in the law and would like to serve their community. If we can't find someone in that kind of capacity, then we may have to offer a stipend. We haven't really nailed down exactly how much that would cost, but we are getting an idea of what other municipalities are paying. I don't think that we will have many hearings. I think that most of these bylaws, when they're broken, it's pretty straightforward that you've broken the bylaw. Your grass was too long, you were noisy, they're pretty cut and dry. So to get to a hearing, the person will have to have a fairly good argument as to either why they didn't break the law or couldn't afford the ticket. So I hope that answers your question. We're still.
Well,
looking.
partly, I think I misunderstood something. There's two different offices. There's a screening
Yes.
person and then the hearing officer. That's what I'm hearing now.
Yes.
And so it doesn't get to the hearing officer until it can't be solved or resolved at the local level, so to speak. Okay, well, that it clears up a little something. But I think when I looked at quickly through those pages of offenses and fines, some of the fines are pretty stiff. People who get a big fine are more apt to say, well, I'm going to try to appeal this and go through the process. And I mean, if it's $100, that's one thing, but when you see fines of over 400, that gets to be kind of onerous. So I think we probably will have some appeal, but I was kind of more impressed than anything else with the sheer number of possible offenses that could, it's pages and pages here all of a sudden, and I'm wondering, what are we coming to? But I guess I better leave it there. Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, you may.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. The amounts for the fines, we are discussing some of them. Most of them reflect what is in existing bylaws. So we felt that if that's what we would have put on a Part 1 fine, then we would put the same on an administrative monetary penalty. And I will admit there are quite a few, especially in property standards. But when you walk onto a property that has multiple issues and you can speak to multiple infractions, it can be a nice tool to say, right now I could write you tickets up to this amount. It's nice to have the tool to say, this is how many laws you are breaking at the moment. Would you like to clean up your yard for us? Or would you like to defend this in front of someone at the municipality? Well, and again, not meant to be punitive, but always looking for compliance.
Councillor Dave?
Just kind of a follow-up question to Dean's question. For the hearing officer, this wouldn't be like somebody like a full-time position. This would be kind of a on-demand kind of thing.
Yes, I almost see it as like a quarterly meeting date, where almost like our property standards committee. We have a property standards committee, but if we don't call them, we don't need them. So because this is going to be a bit of a learning over the next couple of years, we'll definitely review our processes. But I see having someone in place that would be available 4 times a year, and then schedule all of those hearings within that time. If we find we need more time, we would have to review. If we find we don't need as much, we'd review it then too. But that's how I see it going forward.
Thank you. Perfect.
Councillor Richard?
Yeah, through you. Thank you. So just, I guess most municipalities use this system, correct? As opposed to what we're using now?
Many smaller municipalities that don't have provincial courts are turning to this system. Just because of access to the courts, it's difficult. There's a lot of obstacles to get to it. It takes a lot of time. So this is sort of sweeping across the smaller municipalities as a way to deal with bylaw enforcement.
Thank you.
So just a comment, I guess, for me, throughout the years, I know that we've come a long way with implementing and having bylaws. And one of the issues we had in the past was not enforcing our bylaws. So I think, we've come a long way and in gaining respect from people in our community. And I think it's probably, this would probably help. Nobody wants to give out fines, but sometimes giving out a fine is a way of people thinking twice about, following some of the rules. And like you say, there's always a first chance, or if you go in there and clean up your yard. We've had issues where we've had to clean out some yards for people in the past. So there's a lot of work. Thank you. As far as some of the fines are a little steep, and then some of them are not steep enough, I think. You know, if you're purposely starting a fire or, you know, stuff like that, $450 doesn't seem like very lots of money for the cost that it would cost to send the fire department out there, or MNR, or, you know. So so I think there's finding a balance in what the fees should be, and maybe this is a good start to it. And like you said, there is a lot all in one shot, but it's all the bylaws that we've worked on throughout the years. So I'm in favor of it. So of what you guys have recommended. So that's my point of view.
Just would like to add to you, I think that staff has done a lot of work here. I'm really impressed with the size of this thing. I mean, what's been created and the detail and I guess that I guess if we're going to grow up as a community, these are the kind of things we have to put in place and learn how to work with the public and get the public to learn how to work in a very rural area with municipal laws. So I think that we're on the right track. I don't mean to sound as though I'm negative at all on this. I guess I was so impressed with the size of that, the number of pages to this part of our agenda that it makes me talk too much. But anyway.
Okay, I think that's it. I don't think we have a resolution. It'll come back in a few weeks when you guys have everything. So thank you, Andrea.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
all good comments are good, Dean, and it's good to have different opinions. We value your opinions, you know. So 6.6, building and planning and development, 6.6.1, a resolution to adopt bylaws to deem parts of a registered plan not to be registered. File number DBL 22-01 FR, Ronald Couvret. And can I do both at the same time?
Through you, Madam Chair, it'll be one bylaw at a time. But
Okay.
if I'm just going to give just a really brief explanation of both at the same time. So both deeming bylaws are meant to deem this. So these lots were part of a subdivision plan. So the deeming bylaw is to deem them no longer part of that subdivision plan. So this will allow him, so the applicant owns both lots. It will allow him to merge them on title and to build on the lot lines if he wishes, or to have one building on one and an accessory structure on the other, or what he wishes to do. So ultimately, they will be merged on title. So both bylaws, we had to address one per lot. So both are doing the same thing. So we'll have to do the two resolutions separately.
Okay, so can I get a mover and a seconder? Counselor Bob and Counselor Randy for the first one. Counselor Richard, sorry.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be resolved that bylaw 2022-25, being a bylaw to deem part of a registered plan not to be registered, so the applicant is Ronald Couvret, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? Okay, a mover and a seconder for the second resolution, Counselor Dave and Counselor Dean.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be resolved that bylaw 2022-26, being a bylaw to deem part of a registered plan not to be registered, Ronald Couvret, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? Okay, 7 correspondence. We have 7.1. I need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Dave, Counselor Richard.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be resolved that council declares the family ball tournament being held on August 5th to the 7th, 2022, hosted by the French River Family Ball Tournament Committee as a community event of municipal significance.
All in favor? 7.2, a resolution to authorize the annual donation of $250 to École Saint-Antoine I need a mover, Counselor Dave, and a seconder, Counselor Richard.
It is duly moved and seconded, be it resolved that council authorize the annual donation of $250 to École Saint-Antoine to assist in the cost of student year-end activities in recognition of community cleanup.
All in favor? 7.3, a resolution to authorize the annual donation of $250 to the Manettville Public School. I need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Bob and Counselor Dean.
It is duly moved and seconded, but resolved that council authorizes the annual donation of $250 to Manettville Public School to assist in the cost of student year-end activities in recognition of community cleanup.
All in favor? Okay. Oh, Counselor Bob has something to say.
I would just like to thank both schools for their community involvement, their cleanup. Just a big merci beaucoup.
I think we need to second that, and a lot of good comments on the recycling projects that went out there. I've heard a lot of talk about it through town, so that's been kind of nice. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda. Counselor Dave and Counselor Dean.
It is duly moved and seconded, be resolved that council approves the items of the consent agenda under section 8.1 and receives the items under section 8.2.
All in favor? Okay, items for consideration, there is none. 8.4 bylaws, none. 10, any notices of motion? Seeing none. 11, announcements and inquiries. Any, Counselor Bob?
One comment, I would just like to say how proud I was last Thursday when I drove into town and I saw all the blue boxes at the driveways all through town, through Highway 64 in Alban. I was extremely proud of our residents on the buy-in of the recycling project. I had quite a few people say, well, I didn't have enough. I didn't put it out this week, but I will next week. I forgot, but I got it on my calendar now and stuff like this. And well, I was proud to see this. Just my second next meeting, I will probably be absent. I might be able to zoom in. I'll be in contact with Mel. Thank you.
Counselor Richard is good. Counselor Dean?
Just trying to think if I have anything to say. I think I've said too much already. I'll let it go, pass it on to
Counselor Dave?
Just to follow up what Bob was saying, I didn't participate myself because I left Thursday morning early for a trip for the weekend. But leaving my place, the first couple houses on my road had their bins out. A little bit at the beginning of the 64, not much on the highway, but right through Alban, looks like almost everybody had their bins out. And I didn't go through Noelville, but I heard most of Noelville had theirs out. So it's nice to see that most people are participating.
nice to see what happens with our recycling as a result of this.
Yeah, I'll say it was nice too. Alban, Manettville, Noelville. It was nice to see that moving forward. I think it's been a long time coming for recycling. So hopefully people keep up the recycling and we get better, like Dean says, with the contamination levels. Be nice to see. Other than that, there's a lot of work being done. The ball fields are ready to go. Soccer is also starting in a few weeks. Kids baseball starting, mixed is starting this week. A lot of the sports are starting, outdoor activities. Other than that, we've started the planting and that. So in a few weeks, those will go up. And I think that's it for me. Staff, all good. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for the confirmation bylaw, a resolution to adopt. Counselor Richard, Counselor Dave,
It is duly moved and seconded, be resolved that bylaw 2022-28, being a bylaw to confirm the proceeding of council at a meeting held on May 18th, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
all in favor? Okay, and a resolution to adjourn. Counselor Dean and Counselor Dave. Oh. Are we good? All in favor? Good. Have a good night, everyone.